Texas Tech has ranked #1 in the country in defensive efficiency for the majority of the season this year with a unique style of play. They've really doubled down on their no-middle defensive principles, meaning they force the ball handler to the baseline, pretty much to the point where they are just daring you to drive. And then once you do, they pounce on the ball handler with help defenders sinking to the level of the drive. This was something I covered on Twitter early in the season, so let's go back to that breakdown from the Nebraska game to get a feel for their defensive principles. Chris Beard and Texas Tech are as obsessed with keeping the ball out of the middle as any team you'll see in college basketball. Watch Moretti's foot angles here. Not only does he have his right foot high on the initial closeout, but even as the ball gets dribbled backwards, he keeps that right foot high and becomes practically parallel with the sideline. This is completely by design. Here you see the same foot angles on Culver's closeout. He's their best perimeter defender and elite at staying on the high side, but still being able to keep his man in front. This time you can see the foot angles off of a dribble handoff. Since Nebraska goes to set a ball screen, Texas Tech goes straight into ice coverage, which is much easier to execute when you're already forcing baseline as your base defense. A no-middle team like Tech has help side defense in their scheme built to handle baseline drives. Here Moretti does his job by helping early and preferably outside the paint. It's Culver's job to drop to the level of the ball and prepare for the first pass out. A baseline drive again, and Odiase is the early helper with Mooney dropping to the level. Here Mooney's the early helper and Moretti is the dropper. And even though Nebraska makes the skip pass, Tech still gets back to even strength pretty easily. If an opponent does get middle, the Tech defense is not built to handle those types of drives. Owens gets beat middle on his closeout and it leads to a wide open corner three. This time Odiase extends so far out that while he doesn't get beat middle initially, the ball handler has time to snake it into the middle. Beyond just their defensive concepts, Tech does have one of the elite shot blockers in the country in Owens to clean up mistakes with the versatility to guard on the perimeter too. The one thing I probably didn't emphasize enough in that initial breakdown was their charge-taking ability. Against Texas Tech, if you try to fight the no-middle defense and get into the middle anyways, you're risking a charge. And similarly, if you don't fight the on-ball defender and drive baseline, now the help defender is looking to take a charge. This isn't just a gimmick that looks great against poor competition but doesn't translate to higher level opponents. Texas Tech held Duke to just 0.85 points per possession this season, which was Duke's second worst game of the season and worst game when at full strength. And as you can see from these clips, the game consisted of plenty of instances of the star Duke freshman settling for baseline drives and charging or turning it over in that area. Here's what Buffalo coach Nate Oates and center Nick Perkins, who were Texas Tech's second-round opponent in the NCAA tournament, had to say about Tech's defense in their pregame press conference.
Now, schematic-wise, they don't let you get to your stuff. I mean, they get the ball to a side, they keep it to the side. Their help defense is better than anybody in the country. When they come to help, they're coming aggressive and they're trying to steal the ball. And look, if you put your head down on a drive, you're going to get a charge. They take charges better than anybody in the country. If you come and you're soft going to the rim, they're going to block your shot. So you're either getting a charge or getting your shot blocked.
The charges, and also they kind of force everything one way, which is it's kind of different than what we used to seeing. And I think it's what kind of makes their defense so good.
So Buffalo was cognizant of Texas Tech's charge taking and shot blocking abilities, but for the most part were still unable to make them pay on skip passes. The Red Raiders fly around on the weak side and are so good at deflecting the skip pass out. On this play, Buffalo does narrowly get the baseline drift pass to the corner, and because of that, Mooney has to settle for a running contest on the shot. Ideally, you want to make the skip pass early while the defense is still sinking to the level of the ball, with momentum going the wrong way to close out. But Jeremy Harris is lucky to not pick up a charge here, leaving his feet for the jump pass. Here's another concept that Buffalo tried. Tariq Owens is the low man right now who would step up for help. So Buffalo zippers his man up as the baseline drive is occurring. That off-ball movement now makes Culver the low man, but he's a step or two late on the help. Your other option as an offense is to try to drive middle. It's easier said than done given the Texas Tech emphasis on foot angles and keeping it out of the middle. But as I've mentioned, if you can get middle, the structure of the defense kind of falls apart. Opponents have really not been able to do this on any type of consistent basis. But there were a couple breakdowns in the Buffalo game immediately following switches. Odiase and Owens are pretty versatile for their size on the perimeter, but that's your best chance of catching Tech sleeping on their foot angles and maybe sneaking into the middle. On the other hand, you have Michigan, who is Texas Tech's Sweet 16 opponent. Michigan has ranked number 2 in defensive efficiency for the majority of the season. There's one very important similarity between these two defenses that we'll get to at the end of this video, but for the most part, these two teams actually have very different philosophies. Despite being the 2 best defenses in the country, Michigan certainly does not force the ball baseline. Instead, they square you up and just guard the ball as best as possible. But the biggest difference is how they help. We saw Texas Tech defenders flying to the ball early and clogging up the paint. Well, Michigan prefers not to help at all. It's not always the same game to game, and it can depend on the opponent and Michigan's scouting of that opponent, but their basic principles really showed during an early season blowout at Villanova. Villanova shoots the most threes of any high major team in the country, and Michigan took that dimension of Villanova's offense away by just not helping until as late as physically possible. Michigan trusts their one-on-one point of attack defense and stays at home on shooters. All the open paint that you see in these clips are a stark contrast from Texas Tech sinking to the ball. Here's another second-round opponent, Florida, from a post-game press conference when asked about Michigan's defense.
I think it was just how disciplined they were on defense, just shutting down driving angles and not letting us get our shots off easily. Good ball screen coverage, but it was just overall the defense throughout the whole game was pretty consistent.
I can just definitely see why they're number 1 in college basketball for defense. I mean, they were just super solid. Everything we tried to run, they were there. Or the mistakes that they made, they were able to cover them so fast. And they had the 7-footer inside too. So even when you did get in the paint, it was hard for to finish because he was altering shots even though he wasn't blocking them. So and then on the perimeter, we had to take some contested shots, especially late shot clock that kind of altered our shots a little bit too.
Just because Michigan prefers not to help doesn't mean they aren't capable of helping. Here, when Jordan Poole gets beat on the back door, you can see John Teskey's rim protection at work. Teske is versatile for a 7-footer. In ball screen coverage, he's elite at containing both the ball handler and the roller at once. It looks like the roll might be open here, but Teske's length makes the pass tough. Michigan usually doesn't switch with Teske, but it's not exactly the end of the world if it happens. And for the most part, they're going to maintain their principles and only help when necessary, even if mismatched. Another player that allows Michigan to not have to rely on help is Xavier Simpson. He's elite at fighting through ball screens and really just not getting screened in the first place, getting back to even with the ball handler without fouling. The combination of Simpson and Teske guarding a ball screen is as good of a combo as anyone in the country. Here's a play Florida ran a couple times to ISO Simpson in the post, and again, no help from Michigan unless absolutely necessary. I haven't even mentioned Charles Matthews yet, one of the best, if not the best, on-ball wing defender in the country. He glides around the court with freakishly good one-on-one defense, and again allows Michigan the luxury of not having to help. Jarrett Culver is a similar wing defender for Texas Tech with length and athleticism to just lock in on the ball. And ultimately, that's the similarity between the two teams, the players. Regardless of the scheme, both teams have some of the best defensive players in the country. Michigan could run Texas Tech's scheme and still be an elite defense, and Texas Tech could run Michigan's. I'll leave you with one more example. Here's a go-to set for Buffalo where they overload a side in order to get Nick Perkins a post seal. Against Southern Illinois, the play leads to free throw attempts for Perkins. And here's the same play, but against Texas Tech. They don't do anything scheme or strategy-wise that Southern Illinois didn't, but the defensive skill set of Odiase, Owens, and the whole team just takes over. So for both Michigan and Texas Tech, the players are first and foremost what make the defenses so great. And in addition to that, the scheme and coaching definitely doesn't hurt.